This is Rick speaking. Hello and welcome to Champion Individual Rights, where I always focus on the importance of digesting reality in a moral context. Today, we live in a world where U.S. politicians and politicians around the world are behaving as if individual rights do not even exist. What can we do to turn this situation around? We have to begin by digesting reality in a moral context. Proclamation for Individual Rights. The most basic right, a right being a moral sanction, should be that of the individuals to their own life, and, as it has to follow, to the product of their own endeavors. It follows that the basic immorality would be the violation of individual rights, which can only be accomplished by one way: physical force, whether it be actual or implied. The group should have no rights that exist apart from the individuals that comprise the group. It follows that numbers do not determine rights, stealing being equally immoral, whether committed by an individual, 5 men, or an army of men under orders from politicians. Similarly, murder is equally immoral, whether being committed by an individual, 5 men, or an army of men under orders from politicians. In truth, the politicians should be bound to the same laws of the conscience that the average individual is bound to. With all of the focus today on minority rights, I implore people to recognize the greatest group as all of mankind, the greatest minority within, the individual. We should all become champions of individual rights. Human rights, by definition, are rights that are believed to belong justifiably to every person. And a person, by definition, is an individual. Logically, without the recognition of individual rights, there can be no such thing as the recognition of human rights. U.S. politicians lied about why they invaded Iraq. There were no weapons of mass destruction or ties to bin Laden and 911. There were new estimates in that since the invasion of Iraq in 2003, an estimated 2.4 million Iraqis have died, and that would include an estimation of over 600,000 children. On the U.S. Department of State's website, it states, "A central goal of U.S. foreign policy has been the promotion of respect for human rights." Politicians operate under the illusion that their goals are so high, that their goals are so lofty, that they can do anything that they want in order to achieve their goals. In reality, Iraq has not been liberated as they claim. Quote, "The deliberate killing of a large group of people of a different ethnicity or of a particular nation is genocide, not liberation." U.S. politicians also claimed they were fighting a war against terror as they invaded Iraq on a pax of outright lies. How can anyone deny that they did not terrorize the Iraqi people by the millions in the form of robbing them, raping them, murdering them, and torturing them? In reality, they dehumanized the Iraqi people to the point where they could lie about why they were sending them to their deaths and destroying their cities. Politicians also operate under the illusion that they are not bound to the same laws of the conscience that the average individual is bound to. In reality, the politicians should be bound to the same laws of the conscience that you and I are bound to, the same laws of the conscience that the average individual is bound to. In a moral nation, the politicians would recognize and promote for the recognition of individual rights on a global basis with the goal of achieving world peace. In reality, the moral law applies to all rational creatures necessarily, to all of humanity, and that would just happen to include the political leaders of the world. There are no exceptions. It is only through our moral cognition, it is only through our ability to digest reality in a moral context that mankind can achieve its ultimatum: world peace through the recognition of individual rights on a global basis, with the understanding that every individual, that's every man, every woman, and every child, should have a right to their own life, privacy, and possessions, regardless of their ethnicity or the geography upon which they preside. This is the exact opposite position of the morally bankrupt deep state, new world order, world cabal nonsense that is devastating our planet today with massive death, destruction, and suffering. With the threat of nuclear war in the air, now is the time for a peaceful revolution of thought. Thank you for considering my words.